Hello, 5th through 8th grade. I would like to read you and have this recorded as the first book in our next week for Unit 1. It is a book called What If? Amazing Stories, and they are selected by Monica Hughes. So this is an anthology, which means that it is a collection of several stories within this book, all written by different authors. Okay? So I'm kind of wondering what you're thinking already based on the title and based on the illustration that's on the front. All right, the story that we're to read is called A Wish Named Arnold, and it is by Charles DeLint. He is our author. The synopsis or premise at the top says, what if, just like the cover, you only get one wish? Okay. Let that set with you and resonate. What if you only get one wish? Just one. Okay, I'll go ahead and read about half of the story to you, and then what I'd like to do with it is you guys will watch this recording, and then we will have a Zoom meeting to talk about it. It seems to go a lot better when I don't just have you sitting there and watching me on Zoom. So let's give it a shot. Here goes. Marguerite kept a wish in a brass egg, and its name was Arnold. The egg screwed apart in the middle. Inside, wrapped in a small piece of faded velvet, was the wish. It was a small wish, about the length of a man's thumb. You can look at your thumb. And was made of black clay in the rough shape of a bird. Marguerite decided straight away that it was a crow, even if it did have a splash of white on its head. That made it just more special for her, because she had dyed a forelock of her own hair a peroxide white just before the summer started, much to her parents' dismay. I want to stop at the word forelock because it's kind of a prefix on there. The prefix F-O-R-E means front, kind of like when we say before, it means at the beginning. So a forelock of hair at the beginning or the front of her head. So probably bangs or something. She'd found the egg under a pile of junk in Miller's while tagging along with her mother and aunt on their usual weekend tour of the local antique shops. Miller's was near their cottage on Oddie Lake, just down the road from Rideau Ferry, and considered to be the best unique shop in the area. The egg and its dubious contents were only $2, and maybe the egg was dinged up a little and didn't screw together quite right, and maybe the carving didn't look so much like a crow as it did a lump of black clay with what could be a beak on it, but she'd bought it all the same. It wasn't until Arnold talked to her that she found out he was a wish. What do you mean you're a wish? She'd asked, keeping her voice low so that her parents wouldn't think she'd taken to talking in her sleep. Like a genie in a lamp? Something like that. It was all quite confusing. Arnold lay in her hand, an unmoving lump that was definitely not alive, even if he did look like a bird, sort of. That was a plain fact, as her father liked to say. On the other hand, someone was definitely speaking to her in a low, buzzing voice that tickled pleasantly inside her head. I wonder if I'm dreaming, she thought. She gave her white forelock a tug, then brushed it away from her brow and bent down to give the clay bird a closer look. What sort of wish can you give me? She asked finally. Think of something. Any one thing that you want, and I'll give it to you. Anything? Within reasonable limits. Marguerite nodded sagely. She was all too familiar with that expression. Reasonable limits was why she only had one forelock dyed instead of a whole swath of rainbow colors like her friend Tina, or a mohawk like Sheila. If she just washed her hair and let it dry, and you ignored the dyed forelock, she had a most reasonable short haircut. But all it took was a little gel that she kept hidden in her purse, and by the time she joined her friends at the mall, her hair was sticking out around her head in a bristle of spikes. It was just such a pain wearing a hat when she came home and having to wash out the gel right away. Maybe that should be her wish. That she could go around looking just however she pleased and nobody could tell her any different. Except that seemed like a waste of a wish. She should probably ask for great heaps of money and jewels, or maybe for 100 more wishes. How come I only get one wish? She asked. Because that's all I am, Arnold replied. One small wish. Genies and magic fish give 3. In fact, everybody in all the stories usually gets 3. Isn't it a tradition or something? Not where I am from. Where do you come from? There was a moment's pause, then Arnold said softly, I'm not really sure. Marguerite felt a little uncomfortable at that. The voice tickling her mind sounded too sad, and she started to feel ashamed of being so greedy. Listen, she said, I didn't really mean to, That's all right, Arnold replied. Just let me know when you've decided when your wish is. Marguerite got a feeling in her head then as though something had just slipped away, like a lost memory or a half-remembered thought. Then she realized that Arnold had just gone back to whatever it was that he'd been before she'd opened the egg. Thoughtfully, she wrapped him up in the faded velvet and then shut him away in the egg. She put the egg under her pillow and went to sleep. All the next day she kept thinking about the brass egg and the clay crow inside it, about her one wish and all the wonderful things that there were to wish for. She meant to take out the egg right away, first thing in the morning, but she never found quite the time. She went fishing with her father after breakfast, and then she went into Perth to shop with her mother, and then she went swimming with Steve, who lived 2 cottages down and liked punk music as much as she did, though maybe for different reasons. She didn't get back to her egg until bedtime that night. What happens to you after I've made my wish? She asked after she'd taken Arnold out of the egg. I go away. Marguerite asked, Where to? Before she really thought about what she was saying, but this time Arnold didn't get upset. To be someone else's wish, he said. And after that? Well, after they've made their wish, I'll go on to the next and the next. It sounds kind of boring. Oh no, I get to meet all sorts of interesting people. Marguerite scratched her nose. She'd gotten a mosquito bite right on the end of it and felt very much like Pinocchio, though she hadn't been telling any lies. Have you always been a wish? She asked, not thinking again. Arnold's voice grew so quiet that it was just a feathery touch in her mind. I remember being something else, a long time ago. Marguerite leaned closer, as though that would help her hear him better. But there was a sudden feeling in her as though Arnold had shaken himself out of his reverie. Do you know what you're going to wish for yet? He asked briskly. Not exactly. Well, just let me know when you're ready, he said, and then he was gone again. Marguerite sighed and put him away. This didn't seem to be at all the way this whole wishing business should go. Instead of feeling all excited about being able to ask for anything, any one thing, she felt guilty because she kept making Arnold feel bad. Mind you, she thought, he did seem to be a gloomy sort of genie when you come right down to it. She fell asleep wondering if he looked the same wherever he went to when he left her as he did when she held him in her hand. Somehow his ticklish, raspy voice didn't quite go with the lumpy clay figure that lay inside the brass egg. She supposed she'd never know. All right, I'm going to stop here. We will meet after you view this video, or after you read it. I'll attach the pages, and I'll give you some time, and then we'll meet and discuss what we've read so far. All right, I'll see you then.